All right, guys. First of all, let's get started by discussing the latest in paranormal news. Giant freaking robot is running a really cool article about the so-called Hat Man, or what some people believe to be the origin of the Men in Black. I'm iffy about that. There are some very interesting crossover cases, and we are, examining ongoing the Hitchhiker effect. The Hat Man may be the perfect example of that. And I'm not sure if the Hat Man is exactly the same thing as the Men in Black, who show up fully formed and interact with UFO eyewitnesses, trying to get them not to talk. But the Hat Man shows up, this completely blacked out entity wearing what appears to be a fedora-like hat, shows up consistently in the UFO phenomenon. And because there is such a likeness between the resemblance of the so-called Hat Man and the Men in Black, many have made the supposition that they might in fact be the same thing. Take a look at that article. It is fascinating, and they cover a lot of stuff pertaining to what we are examining. So I'll probably come back and do a show just on the Men in Black and the Hat Man, because they show a really good example of this area, this place where there seems to be a paranormal crossover, almost like a paranormal virus that spreads out from this UFO/alien activity. So take a look at that, guys. It's really, really cool. Next up, Harvard physicist A.V. Loeb says we should not ask the U.S. government for data on UFOs. You have to realize that Professor Loeb has tons of funding, and he's currently engaged in the so-called Galileo Project, which is an effort to build a system that will automatically detect and track and photograph/film UFOs with the highest definition camera technology available. This is in an effort to obtain a high definition video footage or photograph of a UFO, which to date they claim does not exist. And that's because of this field. There's some sort of a field that's generated by these craft that appears to somehow slightly bend light rays around it. That's a reason why a lot of these craft appear to be, somewhat nebulous when they're zoomed in on. So that's interesting article as well. That's on TMZ, so take a look at that. Next up is a really interesting article that came out on Bro Bible. This is for the cryptozoology fans out there. Bro Bible ran an article titled Wildlife Expert Forrest Gallant discusses alleged 50-foot snake seen in the Congo. And, when you read the account, it sounds extremely credible. This was a legit team of forest experts that were out there doing an expedition of some kind, and they spotted a 50-foot long snake. And it's an interesting article because it talks about how people in this area have a long-held oral tradition of a god that lived in the area that takes the form of a giant snake. And it's fascinating because you can see how oral history tends to encapsulate the truth in story form and pass it along. So that's something that everybody should take a look at. I thought it was a really interesting, cool article. And Next up is really interesting, the mirror over in the UK. There's plenty of outlets here now reporting it. For some reason, the mirror in the UK always seems to break these stories first. That's why they show up on the Facebook page a lot, and why I show them here a lot is because they just show them, they get the information first. So this is interesting because the U.S. military does have footage of an actual orb, an alien round sphere, metallic-looking sphere that flies right along a spy plane over Mosul during the conflict. And this is footage that is just a few feet from the craft. And this is that footage that I was talking about many months ago. That was that it was insinuated by Corbell and others that it was going to eventually make its way out. And this is the footage of the alien craft just a few feet from the actual cockpit of the craft. So it's something that we all need to take a look at. If you've not seen the UFO compilation video I just put out, take a look at that. It's a good look at what some of these alien craft look like and what they're capable of. And it's something that we need to begin to study more in depth as far as the structure and utilization of the various kinds of craft that they have. So take a look at that article. This was a fascinating article. An enormous crocodile carries the body of a drowned child back to his family. Again, you can find all of these articles on the Paranormal Intelligence Agency Facebook page. It is a news aggregator service, so it's well worth hitting the like button over there, because you get to see these articles first as they pop up. And this is an interesting article because it describes what appeared to be very weird, unlike reptile type brain behavior. I mean, this thing obviously knew and exhibited some form of empathy in bringing this child back to the people who were looking for it and leaving it right there within a few feet of them. It's hard to argue with intent that there wasn't an intent to do just that. So, you know, we don't know a lot about nature, especially about consciousness and how it works, and the kind of consciousness maybe we all share, even with the animals on this planet. So that's fascinating. There is an article out there showing what appears to be a portal opening in the sky above Hawaii. That was ran on Indy 100. And there is video footage of it. Again, these spirals that look like they're opening a hole in the sky are things that have been spotted around the world. And I actually include some footage of one of them in that UFO compilation video. So take a look at that. And finally, let's get to the main topic. And the main topic tonight is the blue orb mystery. These are the blue orbs that are part and parcel of the alien experience, of the alien presence. And we're going to talk about some examples about that. We're going to talk about what these orbs are capable of doing and how they're capable of harming humans. And I wanted to read you this quote. It comes out of the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. And this is, I believe, one of the most important clues that exist in the forensic investigation ongoing of the Hitchhiker effect. And I quote, A ball of light appeared in their home shortly after the flying saucer sighting. It first appeared in the older sister's bedroom. It went down the hall and appeared in my mother and dad's bedroom. End quote. Kim Arnold, daughter of Kenneth Arnold, relating the appearance of a ball of light / orb in the Arnold home shortly after her father's history-making sighting on June 24, 1947. Here is at ground zero for modern-day UFO sighting activity, the Hitchhiker effect taking place in Kenneth Arnold's home. That tells us something that we really needed to know, and that's how far back the Hitchhiker effect was going. And that is because we did not know whether or not the Hitchhiker contamination was in fact originating from Skinwalker Ranch. The reason being, many of the same personnel involved at Skinwalker Ranch were later involved in the OSAP and BASS programs at the Pentagon. It was these programs who documented the Hitchhiker effect. Therefore, a contamination of some kind could have been taken from the ranch into these programs and been accountable for the Hitchhiker effect. However, we now know that the Hitchhiker effect goes far, far back in time before anything was known about Skinwalker Ranch. So let's get to our main topic, the blue orb mystery.
Well, let's talk about the blue orbs a little bit, guys. I decided that the blue orb should be tonight's topic because of information I came across in the OSAP and BASS investigation, and things that were written about the blue orbs by Colm Kelleher and Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, etc. And the blue orbs represent not only a key part of the overall UFO mystery, but they are extremely dangerous, which is one of the main reasons I wanted to bring the topic up. In all instances where the blue orbs were studied by the OSAP and BASS program, the scientists at the Pentagon who were, tasked with this original UAP study, in all cases, the orbs appeared to be able to emit a type of ionizing radiation to the degree that it caused long-term health effects in the observers of the phenomenon. In each case, this turned out to be a form of cancer. It was a different kind of cancer in each person. But in some of those cases, the damage was terminal. That's a huge, huge thing, that the phenomenon, and we know now why in the Pentagon report, they stopped short of saying it was alien, but they did say it had detrimental health effects. Well, we know now that that is in fact exactly what they had discovered using their extremely well-documented scientific method. Pardon me and my coffee. There were various cases documented by the OSAP people. And in one of those cases, it was a gentleman and his daughter who were on a road trip. She describes how she noticed 3 blue orbs way off in the distance in a field as they were driving, and to her it looked like they were playing. All of a sudden, right as she noticed this was happening, the orbs made a beeline for her and her father in their car. The orbs passed through the car. One of them went through her father's body at the shoulder level, passed out through the car again, and he described being able to see it clearly as a softball-shaped sphere with clearly defined lines and ridges. He describes how when the orb hit him, he felt the impact of it. And he describes how, despite the fact that he only got 4 hours of sleep that night, the next day he awoke feeling completely refreshed. However, during the course of that next day, he also began to experience the effects of radiation poisoning. During the night, he had a vivid dream of a face inside of a ball of light and somebody poking him on the shoulder and saying, "Okay, we will fix that." We don't know what that means. He doesn't know what it means, but he feels like it was related to the overall experience. And the orb passing through his body left ionizing radiation damage. He ended up losing all of his hair, suffering horrible radiation burns, and eventually got cancer from this event. One of the intelligence agents previously mentioned that was initially at Skinwalker Ranch and who took the Hitchhiker effect home with him, took with him some of these blue orbs. Some of the Hitchhiker effect eventually manifested as a blue orb. He and his wife were walking their dog one evening, and this was after they thought that the activity had died off, and a blue orb manifested in the distance. It shot towards them. It barely brushed her as it went by, and she ends up contracting cancer. So we're looking at something that can emit this radiation and do it so quickly that it can leave these long lasting impacts on human health. The scientists who were studying all of the Hitchhiker stuff brought up something that I think is now paramount in my forensic investigation of the overall Hitchhiker effect and its relationship to paranormal activity. See, they discovered that Kenneth Arnold, who I was talking about earlier, and quoted his daughter, that after that sighting, he experienced the Hitchhiker effect. That is a huge clue for us, because previous to the knowledge of that was the suspicion that the so-called paranormal virus, as I like to put it, or the Hitchhiker effect, may have originated at Skinwalker Ranch. But now we know that that is in fact not the case, that the Hitchhiker effect is just part of Skinwalker Ranch, just like the Hitchhiker effect is part of the overall UFO phenomenon, and that this can be traced back to the, zero point of Kenneth Arnold and in modern day UFO sightings. June 24th, 1947, wasn't very long, guys, after that we have Roswell occur. And it does not escape attention that Roswell too, the citizens in Roswell and the Army personnel who were there experienced hardcore paranormal activity along with that experience. So this is something that we're going to have to wrap our minds around to grasp this idea that this phenomenon is able to change and alter form according to its own intent. And that's the other thing, is this phenomenon has apparently both the intent and the know-how, the ability to become quantumly entangled with the observer of the phenomenon. It appears as though this is a purposeful happening and not just a byproduct of interaction. That goes to intent. That is something that is extremely important. The blue orbs were chronicled numerous times from various personnel that were in these programs. And I'm sure that they still are to this day. And the one thing that is really interesting to me about the blue orbs is that we have, previous to this, come to the conclusion, apparent conclusion, that the attraction to nuclear material / devices is key to the mystery itself, that it is a pattern which repeats over and over again. And then here you have an aspect of the overall mystery that can emit radiation, the same as our nuclear weapons. And you have to logically presuppose that there is a connection between that. How can we say that part of the phenomenon is infatuated with our nuclear weapons and testing? That two of the primary crash events that occurred within very close distance of nuclear testing ranges. That you have accompanying paranormal activity in the form of blue orbs who are able to emit an ionizing radiation that we would find quite similar to that we experience dealing with nuclear material. All of that has to be interconnected in a way that we're not quite yet seeing. But it has to be perhaps the source of their energy. Maybe it's their biggest weakness. And, we have to ask ourselves, how is it that we are dealing with a phenomenon that appears as nuts and bolts craft flying around, and then when the nuts and bolt craft flies off, there's this residue of paranormal activity still going on? That describes really quantum entanglement within a given space and range. And I think that that's really where this mystery is headed. I think it's headed into the mysteries of the quantum world and quantum entanglement itself. And we have to ask ourselves, why does it want to be quantumly entangled with the consciousness of an observer? That appears to be part of the overall intent. Why does it appear in different form over and over again throughout history? Something which Jacques Vallée points out exceedingly well. And we have to ask ourselves, was Terence McKenna onto something when he stated that humanity lives in a symbiotic relationship with something that disguises itself as an alien invasion so as not to alarm us? I mean, what an insight. that he must have gotten on one of his journeys into the psychedelic world. And I have to ask the question, as alarming as an alien invasion is to all of us, if it's pretending to be that instead of what it really is, in this symbiosis, this symbiotic relationship, just how horrified should we be that whatever is happening is something even scarier than an alien invasion? And why would you have to perpetrate yourself as that? For what end? The mystery deepens, but so does our efforts. And as time goes along here, I feel like lots and lots of clues are going to begin to fall into place in a way that we begin to get a very linear and logical explanation for what this phenomenon is, how it's able to do what it does, and why it seems to have the intent that it has. That's all I have for you guys tonight. Join me next time on Paranormal Planet. Until then, keep your eyes open, keep your head on a swivel. Paranormal is happening around you all the time. I will see you next week.